In the heart of a small, quiet town, there was a humble diner that was often filled with the scent of fresh coffee and the sound of light chatter. The place was owned by Mr. Thompson, an old man who had run the diner for years. It was a cozy spot, tucked away on a corner, with faded red booths and vintage photos on the walls, a perfect place for anyone seeking a hot meal and a moment of peace. But there was something truly special about this diner. And it wasn't just the food. The real charm came from the waitress who worked there every day, rain or shine. Her name was Lily. She was in her late 20s with soft brown hair tied back into a neat ponytail and bright eyes that always seemed to radiate kindness. Lily wasn't just known for her efficiency in taking orders and serving food. She was known for something far more important, her heart. Lily had grown up in the same town, and although life hadn't always been easy for her, she had learned the importance of helping others. Every day, after her long shift at the diner, she would quietly make her way to the corner of the street where a young boy named Marcus would be sitting. Marcus was an orphan, living on the streets ever since his parents passed away in a tragic accident. With no family to care for him, Marcus had been forced to fend for himself. But Lily couldn't bear to see a child go hungry, so she made sure to bring him a warm meal whenever she could. It wasn't much, just leftovers from the diner that Lily carefully packed away in a small plastic container. But to Marcus, it was the world. He would smile shyly whenever she approached, grateful for her kindness. He often told her how he wished for a family, a place to call home. But Lily didn't know how to help him with that. She wasn't rich, and her life was far from easy. She struggled to make ends meet, working long hours at the diner just to pay for rent and basic necessities. Yet, no matter how hard things were for her, she always made room in her heart to care for Marcus. Each day, Lily would sit with him for a while, talking about the little things, asking him about his day, and listening to his dreams. She would tell him stories about her own childhood, about her family, and the times when things were better. She would bring him small gifts when she could afford it, like a toy or a book. But most importantly, she brought him hope. She brought him the belief that there was still goodness in the world, despite the hardships he had faced. It wasn't long before the other townsfolk began to notice the quiet bond between Lily and Marcus. Some of the regulars at the diner would ask her about the boy she helped, but Lily always kept the details to herself. She didn't want anyone to pity her or Marcus. She simply did what she felt was right, helping someone in need without expecting anything in return. One afternoon, as Lily sat with Marcus outside the diner, sharing a sandwich and laughing at his stories, something changed. A sleek black car pulled up near the sidewalk, its engine humming softly as it came to a stop. The car's tinted windows made it hard to see who was inside, but soon the door opened and a man stepped out. He was tall, dressed in a sharp suit, with a stern expression on his face. It was clear he didn't belong in this part of town. The car door shut with a soft click, and the man glanced around, his gaze landing on Lily and Marcus. Lily was surprised. She hadn't seen anyone like him around here before. His presence seemed out of place, as if he had come from another world entirely. But Marcus, who was used to people ignoring him, barely noticed. He continued to eat his meal, completely unaware of the stranger's watchful eyes. The man stood there for a moment, observing them both. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his gaze, a flicker of curiosity, maybe even admiration. He watched as Lily handed Marcus the last of the food she had brought, her face glowing with kindness. In that moment, something stirred within the man. He had seen many things in his life: wealth, power, and success. But he had never seen anything as pure as the kindness this young waitress was showing to an orphan. As Lily finished the meal, she stood up to leave, smiling at Marcus before walking back toward the diner. But the man couldn't shake the image of the waitress and the boy. He followed her inside, stepping into the diner as she returned to her work. It was at that moment, while Lily was serving a customer, that the man decided he could no longer stay in the background. Something about this waitress's quiet selflessness had moved him in a way he hadn't expected. He would do something about it. The man was a billionaire. His name was Robert Hayes. He had built an empire from the ground up. But despite all his wealth, there was one thing he lacked: meaning. And for the first time in a long while, he felt compelled to make a difference. Unbeknownst to Lily, the course of her life was about to change forever. Lily had always been a dedicated employee of the diner. She had worked there for 3 years, and in that time, she had become more than just a waitress. She was the heart of the diner, a warm presence that made the place feel like home for every customer who walked through the door. Her kindness, her ability to listen, and the way she made every person feel special were qualities that made her stand out. But despite her hard work and commitment, Lily had never felt truly appreciated by her boss, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson was a grumpy, old man who had a reputation for being strict and cold-hearted. He ran the diner with an iron fist, expecting his employees to follow his orders without question. Lily had always done her best to meet his expectations, despite the long hours and low pay. But she never complained. She loved working at the diner, and she loved the customers. What kept her going were the moments when she could help someone, like when she took time out of her day to feed Marcus. It was those little acts of kindness that made her feel like her life had purpose. However, things had started to change recently. The diner, which had once been a bustling place with regular customers, was now struggling. Business had slowed down, and Mr. Thompson had become more and more irritable. He began to blame his employees for the drop in sales, even though they were doing their best to keep the place running smoothly. He started tightening the rules, cutting hours, and giving less time off. It was clear that he was feeling the pressure, and Lily, as one of his longest-serving employees, often found herself at the receiving end of his frustration. It was on a particularly busy Tuesday afternoon that everything came to a head. The diner was packed, as usual, with the usual lunch crowd. The smell of grilled cheese sandwiches and fresh coffee filled the air. Lily was rushing from table to table, making sure each customer had everything they needed. The lunch rush was always chaotic, but Lily had learned to handle it with ease. She worked with grace, her eyes scanning the room, her hands moving with purpose as she delivered orders and cleared empty plates. But then, something unusual happened. Mr. Thompson called her into the back office. It was rare for him to pull her away during the lunch rush, and the suddenness of it made her heart race. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked into the small, dimly lit office, wondering what he could possibly want. She had no idea that her life was about to take an unexpected turn. "Sit down, Lily," Mr. Thompson said, his voice cold and harsh. He didn't look up from the papers he was shuffling on his desk. Lily hesitated for a moment before taking a seat in front of him, her mind racing with possibilities. She had no idea what was coming, but her gut told her it wasn't good. The next few days passed in a blur for Lily. She continued her work at the diner, doing what she always did, serving food with a smile, taking orders, and making sure the customers felt welcome. But deep down, her heart wasn't fully in it anymore. The burden of her own struggles weighed heavily on her, and her daily visits to Marcus, though fulfilling, left her constantly thinking about the uncertain future that lay ahead. The diner, despite its charm, was beginning to lose business. Mr. Thompson, the owner, was old and hadn't been able to keep up with the rising costs of running the diner. Lily had heard him talking to the other workers about the possibility of closing down the place soon. The thought of losing her job was terrifying. Without it, she wouldn't be able to afford her rent or buy food for herself or Marcus. One afternoon, as she was preparing a large coffee pot for the lunchtime rush, Mr. Thompson called her into his office. Lily felt a knot tighten in her stomach as she walked toward the back of the diner. She didn't know why, but something felt off. As soon as she entered the small office, Mr. Thompson didn't greet her with his usual warm smile. Instead, his face was grim. "Lily, I need to talk to you about something important," Mr. Thompson said, his voice heavy. "I've been having some tough conversations with the bank. The diner's not doing well, and I can't keep paying all of you. I'm sorry, but I have to let you go." Lily's heart sank as the words hit her like a ton of bricks. She didn't know what to say. She stood there, frozen for a moment, trying to process what he had just told her. The diner had been her life, her steady job, and her only source of income. She had given so much of herself to this place, and now it was all slipping away. "Mr. Thompson, please," she pleaded. "I know times are tough, but I need this job. I'll do anything to help out, work extra hours, anything. Please don't fire me." But Mr. Thompson shook his head, his expression filled with regret. "I'm sorry, Lily. It's not personal. You've been a great worker, but I just can't keep this place running anymore. You've been wonderful, but I don't have a choice." Lily stood there, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. She felt her eyes welling up with tears, but she fought them back. She couldn't afford to break down. She had to be strong, for herself and for Marcus. After a few moments, she nodded silently and left the office, her heart heavy with uncertainty. As she walked back to the kitchen, the reality of the situation started to sink in. What would she do now? She had no backup plan, no other job lined up, and nowhere to turn. The thought of not being able to feed Marcus anymore broke her heart. How could she keep her promise to him? To always be there for him. If she had, "I know how hard you've worked, and I believe you deserve a fresh start." Lily felt a mix of emotions, nervousness, excitement, and disbelief. She had always been the one helping others, never expecting anything in return. Yet here she was, about to receive an opportunity that could change everything for her. "Thank you," she whispered, still unsure how to process the kindness she was being shown. Robert gestured to a seat across from him. "I've been thinking about how to make sure you can keep helping Marcus and build a better future for yourself. I have a position available in one of my companies, and I'd like to offer it to you." Lily's heart skipped a beat. "A job? With you?" Robert nodded. "Yes, I've seen the way you care for others, and I want to make sure you don't have to worry about your future. This position will give you a steady income, health benefits, and the stability you need." Lily could hardly believe it. A steady job, something she had longed for, but never thought she'd get. She had always struggled to make ends meet, but now she had the chance to have a stable future. "You're giving me a chance?" she asked, her voice full of gratitude. Robert smiled. "Not just a chance, Lily. I'm giving you the opportunity to build a future, to help more people like you've helped Marcus." Lily felt overwhelmed with emotion. She had always put others before herself, and now someone was doing the same for her. The tears she had fought so hard to hold back started to well up in her eyes. But these weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of hope, tears of gratitude. The job offer wasn't the only thing Robert had in mind. He had also arranged for Marcus to receive the care he needed. He connected Lily with social workers and legal advisors to ensure that Marcus would be placed in a safe home, one where he could finally feel the warmth and security he deserved. Robert had even arranged for Marcus to attend school, providing him with the education that had been denied to him for so long. The next few weeks were a blur of excitement and adjustment. Lily began her new job, and though it was a huge change, she felt a sense of pride she had never experienced before. She no longer had to worry about where her next meal would come from or how she would pay rent. She could focus on doing what she loved, helping others, while also securing a future for herself and Marcus. As for Marcus, his life took a drastic turn for the better. The social workers Robert connected him with quickly found a loving foster family who welcomed him with open arms. They gave him a place to call home, a place where he felt safe, loved, and cared for. Marcus thrived in his new environment, his once distant dreams of a better life slowly coming true. One afternoon after work, Lily went to visit Marcus at his new home. She found him in the backyard, playing with the other children. He ran up to her, his face lit up with a bright smile. "Lily," he exclaimed, his voice full of excitement. "Look, I have a new home, and I go to school now. I'm going to be a doctor one day, just like you said I could be." Lily knelt down and hugged him tightly, feeling the weight of everything she had worked for, the long hours at the diner, the sacrifices she had made, the love she had shown Marcus, finally coming to fruition. "I'm so proud of you, Marcus," she said, her voice full of emotion. "You deserve all the happiness in the world." Tears filled her eyes once again, but this time they were tears of joy. She had been given a new beginning, not just for herself, but for Marcus as well. The road had been long, and it had been filled with struggles, but in the end, the kindness she had shown had come back to her in ways she could never have imagined. As Lily walked back to her apartment later that evening, she felt a deep sense of peace. Her life had changed forever. She no longer felt hopeless. Instead, she felt empowered, knowing that even in the darkest times, kindness could light the way. The world wasn't always kind, but Lily had learned that the smallest acts of goodness could create ripples that reached farther than anyone could imagine. She had found her second chance, and with it, the ability to give back, to help others, and to build the future she had always dreamed of. And as for Marcus, his story was just beginning. He now had a family, a home, and a future full of possibilities. Thanks to Lily's selfless heart and the unexpected intervention of Robert Hayes, both their lives had been transformed in the most beautiful way possible.